everybody.
Hi.
For everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Lucas, dev here. I'm going to be talking about Electron today. So I have the same pretty much sentence, except on 2 different slides. This one's a bit longer. What Electron is, it's basically a framework to build a native app using web technologies that we already know and love, like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that's literally copy and pasted from their official website. So, you might have saying you've probably heard, why do I need web tech to do native technologies? There's other things that do it very well. And that's true. Two of the most popular alternatives probably are Qt and Node WebKit. Qt is great, but it's also, you have to know C++, and it's very hard for beginners. But it does have really good documentation, and it is great for lots of functionality and performance. So Node WebKit, it's kind of like Electron, but not quite there yet. It's got like 2 different runtimes between your node and your actual browser, or rendering browser. And then the documentation it's a little messy. So basically Electron, you get both of the, or you don't get the cons, but you get all the pros of those. And it's super well supported. This list on this link here goes way longer, but I'm sure everyone here has heard of Slack, as well as Discord and Atom. So those are awesome. So what's it really good at is prototyping, because over in my notebook, it's over there. I don't need it. Because you can get it up and running in like literally a second, and I'll show how quickly it is to get an app literally up and running on native. What's it not good for is performance, and pretty much anything that doesn't look like a website. So if you have an app that's, lots of animations and lots of crazy graphics that don't really fall into a DOM structure very well, it's not going to do that very well, unless you're really good with Canvas. But then if you're really good with Canvas, you're probably really good with other things that can do that way better. And also anything that Node doesn't support well, which we'll get into in just a moment. And I will show pretty much how easy it is to get up and running. Should have this already there. Yeah. Literally, so Electron's GitHub is pretty much the best source for all of any info you want from them. They have a bunch of starters, packaging, stuff to package it together, and demos. This is the smallest demo they have, and it's also the one I like to start with, just because it's the bare minimum and it allows you to kind of do everything you want in it. So to get going, let's go to just make a Tech Tailgate directory. Oh no, it already exists. I thought this through. Into there. This takes long. I'm sure I actually have it already built. Just in case. Yep. No, it's right. It doesn't matter. And ta-da, Electron. You notice it has the Chrome dev tool, because that's literally all it is Chromium, but running in natively. So we'll get into a bit of more why it's not just a web browser. Because it says, you see here, it says it's running Node 6. So we'll open this guy up. And while I'm coding, if you guys just have questions, just literally shout them out. So the main application here, this is literally the boilerplate from this guy. And we're going to get deep into it, so I'm not just going to go through this guy really quick. This pretty much just says, hey, what's this starter file to work with, index.html, and what size do you want to run it at, 800 by 600. Pretty simple. You don't need to change much in here. The only thing I often change is to avoid the dev tools. They're great for developing, but they pop up in front of the window. If you get annoying if you're just trying to use it. So that index.html is literally your application page. So this, nothing really special on here. A bunch of document rights, but then process version node, get rid of all that. And down here is actually how you would require a JavaScript file. You can do a regular script tag with a source file or the source attribute on that and just go through it that way. They recommend this way. I haven't really noticed a difference in performance. other than this looks a little nicer, but other than that. And then this end here is basically a JavaScript file. No real surprises. The only one surprise is it's actually Node. So you can this. It up again. And on the console, we actually have access to the file system. So now, basically, we have kind of free reign to do what we want because we have access to FS and OS, and it's pretty much everything of Node is at our control here. So I can even go into here. And then navigate through all those files and kind of do what we will. So the first thing we'll do, and again, this is going to be kind of to get going with it, is we want to just display everything in this current directory and then have it actually output on the page because it's cool in the console, but it doesn't really do much for us there. So roughly for each. So we're just going to create a bunch of H3 tags. Then we also want the size, so we're going to get the gets stat, isn't it? Stat, yeah. So, is everyone familiar with like the file system in Node and how that sort of works? Because that's one of the major things you work with in this sort of framework is like, hey, we now have access to the file system on our HTML pages. So I take everyone's silence as good. And then as we require path, which is another Node variable we have access to. We can also Node install anything we want. So if I could get out of here and install Lodash, say, totally misspelled that. I didn't mean Lodash. Just wow, that's new. Everyone's familiar with Lodash, so in case we didn't want to use an array method for each, we could do it there. But that's really not the special thing. The special thing is nice thing about Electron is that you have access to literally debugging it like right away, so you can just kind of have like a REPL for Node, but in your actual app. So as I finish this up, first one Yep. didn't install it correctly. It installed it, but it didn't save it. So don't really need it right now. So that's totally fine. Don't need that either. And oh, I totally forgot how to run Electron. That's why I need the notebook. But how you actually run it, and there we go, all our files, all our file names, and the size that they are right next to them. So we can display all those any way we want. We kind of list all of them. Is we notice it's just electron dot, because it's actually just a pre-built binary. So it's you just run that on your index on your main.js file. If you look into package.json here, that's all it's doing. Is just running electron, and then on. So when you do the dot, you would think it's going to like index.js, but it's going to this, which can trip you up a lot, especially when you're doing packaging. That'll happen, but doing that. The only weird thing is this will run this specific version of Electron, which might not be the one you have locally installed, because they don't actually semver. It's very annoying. They'll break between like minor versions. But let's go back to our app.
Does it not support live reload, or is that a plugin?
It does. So that's the thing. Like, it's literally a browser. So if you wanted to like webpack it up and do everything you want with browser sync and live reload, you can do that. That's all. Like, it's literally just Chrome. So there's really you don't have to keep relaunching it every time. This is literally the bare minimum app. But yeah, good question. So
does local storage persist between sessions?
Does not. If you want it to persist, luckily there's the file system to just write to a file.
Yeah, or web service or something.
Web service or a database, anywhere. If you're just doing a very simple application, I find it easier to just write to a JSON file and just keep pulling from that. So, cool, we got our data. All right. But yeah, pretty much. You guys notice it's just Chromium and Node put together. There's really no surprises there. Moving on to packaging. Well, first, let's actually go to my other app here. So there's a couple things you can do a lot with this. One of them, oops, is to build a full FTP application. So, I keep having. I'm running the commands here too much. So we have a full FTP app. So if I SSH into an FTP server, and have that at the ready. So what's in here? There's some stuff. Some more stuff. Nothing's in here. So we got biz. Let's actually have data. So, and this is just a server I have running. So this actual FTP app, I'll show, what's the host name? And then we have access to our stuff here, and then that's all that there. Now I notice this is like literally like a file system. You can kind of navigate around this. And that's literally like, you know, lots of native apps have like those abilities. So like if you're building like a C# ASP.NET app, or not ASP, but the C# like native app, they give you just like, hey, here's basically the Windows File Explorer to go around it. Don't really have access to that in JavaScript, but you're gonna have to get creative with it. So if we go over to just put that guy and this guy up. Let's go through it. So this HTML structure is going to look a little bit crazier. Main thing is these two select boxes. Are empty because we populate them with JavaScript as always. But then those guys, the actual individual select objects, which let me pull up the. So, access this here. These are all literally just selected options. And the ones that are folders, so when we have access to Node here, so So, forgot I put this all in the usual stuff. So, when we have access to actual Node here, you can go through and say, hey, like, is it a directory? We do that by abstractly I made this. Is it a directory? If so, then we can do different things with it by making it clickable and making it navigate in. And if is it a file, then we can do something like allow it to be transferred from one server to another. And we can do that using an app that's using CSS and HTML to be styled. The weird thing is, you notice you get a lot of examples like this that are literally FS like commands in where you see a lot of like native JavaScript. Now you can use React or any framework you want here. I, for the sake of just simplicity, decided to use like literally native JavaScript. So right here, this is me defining the actual first directory here. So at every one, there's this. And when you double click it, it navigates up one. And it's a little kind of weird how you would get around that, because you would have to get the current path you're on and then take the directory name of that path and then make a new folder based on that. But that's only when you double click it, so that's just an event handler on top of there. And then that gets placed onto this guy. Box element is this whole select box right there. And then as we navigate through the files, show the directories first, files down below. So that's all happening like here. And there's also, I do a lot of sync methods just because I literally need status to continue, so it doesn't make sense to put it inside a callback, to me anyway. But then after we go through here, then we get our, this method here is the guy that appends all the option tags on there. So then we're able to kind of go through and navigate this. So this is my actual home directory. You go into cars, go into rendering cargo, and see every cool thing there. So that's pretty neat, is being able to kind of go through that. And then we were able to style it like so. I tried to style it a bit so it didn't look like a native app. A lot of the styling is literally basic HTML, but there's a lot of kits out there for you to just make it look like native apps. It sort of defeats the purpose. It's kind of cool when native apps look like Postman, where it's completely different than any other app. So, but yeah. So then after that, we go on to FTP. So in order to do FTP, you have to import another package and then log in. So the cool thing about this is just literally a form. And I'm using the form data object or form data constructor. I could just grab all the elements in my form and say, hey, get my host, get my port, get my user, get my password. Now this connect method has defaults if any of these are falsy. So if host is just defaults to localhost, port is 21, user is anonymous, and then password is anonymous at. So I'm going to connect to my server here, and then as we connect here, this client here, see, I just called it for brevity, hasn't ready, which means as soon as it's ready, I'm going to say, hey, that remote folder item, start populating that guy and use the right box element. And then also start at my home directory. Now, the way I have my FTP server set up, this user that I'm logging into does not have access to anything outside of his home, my home directory. Oh no, spelled my own. So there's everything we have in here. So SSH into stuff. What do I have in there? Money biz, more money. Let's go into there. So now the other thing is then how do we handle grabbing that over and saying, hey, I want to throw that onto my local, because that could be hard. But these methods, these obviously just anchor tags with event handlers. So what they're going to call is a method that scans through every single select item and says which one is selected. So we can show that. So on the actual put link, we're going to get all the option tags and find which one's selected. Then after that, we're going to make a promise that says that basically wraps all of them in a put method or a get method. Let's say is this the get? This is the put. Not the get. There's the get. It's the exact same. That's just going to wrap it and say, hey, as soon as it's done going over to my local directory, that's fine. However, we have to get our local directory. Now we can just do __dir name, but that's not, the user is thinking that this is their local directory, which this is cars rendering cargo. So if we want to put something in there, we have to just basically store this in a variable somewhere, and then say, hey, like when you get it, join with the present working directory, which is that variable name, and then go out and then just grab the file name. So if I want both of these to get, I'll do there, and now those guys are actually in cargo. If we go, where can we go here? So we have access to those 2 new files. And this, I just do copy. I don't do delete from the original server. You have access to all those commands if you wanted to, but you don't. For the sake of this, didn't really feel like doing that. But then we also do the put, which is very similar to the same thing. It goes through every single select method, or options element, and says, hey, which ones are selected? It also ignores all directories, so it doesn't do a deep select, which you could totally do if you had more time. But other than that, so let's get these, put them back over. So that not, there it goes. So, and then obviously we just refresh this as soon as we're done. Now again, all this could be done way less code in a probably much nicer framework, but this is to show that like it's literally just the DOM we're manipulating. So when we get to here, like you notice these are all select tags. I have access to everything on them. Make them huge if I want. So, and it's pretty nice being able to debug native apps using the Chrome Dev tools. The other thing you all obviously get is the profiler. So if I start profiling and say, hey, all those guys in here, stop. You can see where the actual calls take place. So, my charge. There it is. So this app, not really anything going on. So it's very performant, I guess you could say. But cool, we have our app. And now we want to share it with everyone. So we need to package it up. So there's a couple different tools for packaging. The one I like is called Electron Packager. It's not an actual official app. It's made by one of the main contributors to Electron, but it's not officially endorsed by them. And that's because it's very lazy. It just takes all your files and then compresses them up and packages them. So if you're doing anything proprietary, I would recommend against it, for the sake of all your codes just one click away from being somebody right-clicking and being able to see it all. So this package is literally in our package.json. So I'll try and do this. So it is going to take pretty much the starting point of your application. Mine's an app and in main. So you give it that, and then you give it the name. So let's call it FTP thing. And then like a G. It's right here. Platform. Thank you. And this is just OS. So we're building for Mac. So Darwin. This is just a yep. And then we give it the version of Electron. And it's the version of Electron that your program runs. So unfortunately for me, my global version of Electron is way different than the version of Electron that's in here. Now I could just update it, but so I need 1.4. I need 141. And it failed. I'm going to run my script that just does it for me because I probably spelled something wrong. So after it's done, you notice there's a new new folder called Electron Darwin. And if we go to that in the Finder, we have this new one. So there's this guy here, Electron Darwin, x64, and that's literally an app file. So you can give it an icon and pretty much have it, and it's literally just my app. Now I left DevTools on, so if you want to go into our main, I'm going to just comment that out. And then probably want to exit it. Not spell today. Get rid of that. It's open. You can find it, of course. And there it is. And cool. Now we have an app file that we can send to everyone we love. Show them how awesome we are. But there's plenty of ways to distribute it. And it's pretty easy if you're open source because you just use that script. If you're not, so if you're distributing something like Slack or Discord, you probably have a much more strict process on what can actually go out there. So let me just show you really quickly about why you might not want to do this. And that's, I mean, you can open resource app. And then this is all my code. This is also all the different modules. So when this packager specifically does it, it packages literally the Chromium runtime along with all your Node modules and everything else into that app. So this is a little inefficient if you have a lot of dependencies. For something like this that's very small, probably would be just fine. But the other thing is it's not like Unity, where Unity just installs one runtime on your machine, and every time you play something in Unity, it's just using that one. This gives you the Chromium runtime for every single app you have. So if you have like Slack and Postman potentially, then unless they made a change, but that was a while ago. Then distribution. So there's a lot of ways you can distribute it. Honestly, these guys have thought of the best way of just doing it through GitHub on releases. So literally have all their binaries right there, and then do that every version. So unless you want, and if you're updating your app routinely and you don't want people to download new versions, there is it's called Squirrel. If you ever have Atom, you've probably seen it down here when it needs to update, a little picture of a squirrel. And that's just a way of networkly getting updates to Electron applications. So you just kind of give it a diff, and it says hey, just do this. So that was neat. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said the distributables that are not just this Electron Packager.
Yeah.
And you were saying that the Electron Packager, if it's open source, it's fine because you just see the source code.
Yeah.
What do the other packagers do? Do they obfuscate or do
Yeah. So there's a lot of I looked into it as well. Most of the tools that will build that cost money. So a lot of those just Windows Builder tools. For Mac, they seem pretty straightforward. But they kind of compress everything together in a way that it's completely obfuscated, and so you don't actually have access to it's all binary at that point. You don't have access to any of the actual source code. So those are cool, but most of the tools that will just do that for you will cost money, kind of a considerable amount, it's over 200. So, but yeah.
Have you found any, so if you were creating this app for multiple operating systems, are there libraries that will sort of standardize?
Yeah, so this one, the one I'm actually using here, but instead of Darwin, if I just give this all, it might bomb out in the Windows one, but it'll actually try to build every single binary. But I want to say, so this will output in, or it'll attempt to output an exe, and then it'll output I believe a Debian file. But as you can see, it finished the one for Mac really quickly. Probably just see these popping up here. Yeah. So Linux gives you PAK. Press Mac. Yeah, and then it looks like it tried to bomb out the Windows one. For Windows, you have to build it on the Windows machine, which is why there's a kind of a CI tool people use called AppBear that just builds Windows artifacts. It's like Travis CI or Jenkins, but instead of Linux, it's just Windows. So I guess Jenkins can even do anything at this point. Any other questions?
Come across any gotchas?
Yeah, the biggest one is when packaging it, is this guy right here. So actually I was trying to build this morning and it wasn't working, but then I remembered that when you do the Electron Packager, it watches off of this and not off of the actual, I always thought it would be the, what you give it, but no, this is literally a directory to this. So if I could replace this with app and then have this just say main, like, it's really dumb how it just like concats them together, but it does that, and that's the worst thing. The other kind of nice thing about this is if you do have like a C program that you just want, like let's say you just literally have a bash script that you just want like a nice user input, you could just do child process and start executing them. So I have an example of that. It's not going to work on this machine. It's for Windows only. But I can show you the source code. And it's literally just running a like batch command. This is to change music in a video game called Killing Floor. That's why it says that. But that's the actual music things. I think my driver's the guy that runs it. But this guy, all it's doing is just grabbing data from a bunch of JSON objects that are locally stored, and then running a batch script against them that pretty much a lot of the times when you do that, it doesn't take a callback, so it's actually wise to do, exec. So it'll take a callback once it's done, but if like you have a C program that you didn't build and don't have access to, a lot of times you just have to keep pinging it to see what kind of signal it's sending, or wait for it to send a signal back. So you can do the like exec sync, and that'll just give you like that process ID that you can just keep hitting, and then update your UI based on that. So if you have like a progress bar that you want to keep updating, and say like, hey, I'm giving this app just keeps updating, and it gives me a %, but then I have to head it every second or so, or debounce it, and then update my progress bar on the UI. So you see a lot of native apps doing that.
Did you specify the Chrome version?
Hmm?
Did you specify the Chrome version?
You don't. You specify the Electron version, which has packaged Node and Chromium in it. So you saw I was using Node 6, but on my machine, I definitely am not using Node 6, because I work here. So, but when you run Electron, it'll run Node. Usually it's Node 6 at the latest update, which I pulled like 2 weeks, that project was built in like a few weeks, so they do update quickly because this one's using like Electron for like 0.37. We're already on like 1, but again they don't semper, so like they break like almost every minor it seems. Alrighty. That was all I had.